JRPGs have had a pretty great generation since the PlayStation 4's release, and it wasn't really any different in 2020. I would say that some of the best JRPGs of the generation were released this year, and in this video I want to go over 6 of the best JRPGs of 2020 so far. We've got a couple of months left, and a couple more JRPGs will be coming out, but let's take a look at what has been the standout so far. And kicking things off, I do want to start with Ys Memories of Celceta. This was a game that was originally released on the PlayStation Vita, and man, I feel like Ys is really starting to hit its stride in terms of its Western appeal. Maybe that's because of the success of Ys 8. Ys Memories of Celceta didn't have quite as much buzz around it, given that it wasn't a brand new big budget release. However, it was a, budgeted title. It was budgeted well. It was a PlayStation Vita game, so they didn't price it at $59.99. It was only $40, and it was a great game. What I can say about Ys is very similar to what I say about Tales of, and that's that the games are incredibly consistent. You've got solid gameplay, you've got great music. If you don't like Ys music, I really don't know what to say. And you've got pretty good stories in the games as well. Some of them outpace others, but I would say Ys as a franchise in a whole is very, very good, and Memories of Celceta was another good one. Hopefully with Ys 9 Monstrum Nox on the way, that turns out to be very good as well, and I'm sure it will be, given that, again, Ys is just incredibly consistent, and what isn't broke doesn't need to be fixed. And Ys really embodies that every time out of the gate. Next up, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered Edition. This was a game that I wasn't that looking forward to, given that Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles wasn't really my favorite game back in the day. However, it's still a very charming JRPG, and I feel like a lot of people can enjoy it. If you are a fan of Final Fantasy, you're going to enjoy it even more because there is an incredible amount of fan service in the game, and that's really where the game shines. If you want to play it cooperatively, you can do that as well. There's just a lot of fun to be had with Crystal Chronicles. It's not going to be that JRPG that you get incredibly invested into the story or anything like that, but it is a JRPG that you can kick back, have some fun, enjoy the music, enjoy the presentation, enjoy the characters, and that ends up being the very, very cool part about the game, where it's not like this, over dramatic storyline, which absolutely works for a lot of JRPGs, but sometimes it's cool to have something a little bit different, and I feel like Crystal Chronicles Remastered really does give you a different take on JRPGs. It's good, and it was priced pretty well. On top of that, it wasn't a full $60 release, so that was great. Next up, we have Sakura Wars. Sakura Wars was one of those games that I was really hoping would end up being pretty good, just because this is a franchise that really hasn't gotten much love over here in the States, and I understand why. It's more of a JRPG that's definitely catered towards hardcore fans of the genre. It has a lot of elements that I don't think would be catered towards a Western audience. It's very much focused on the relationship building aspect between the characters, and then the gameplay is pretty solid as well. I think the presentation's good, even though it does have that overly bubbly anime style, which I do think is going to be a turnoff for some people, but I think it works within the context of Sakura Wars. This was a game that they had to keep the budget of creating the game in mind when bringing it over here to the West, so you don't have English voice acting, so that's a little bit of a bummer, and maybe that creates another barrier for people to get into the game. However, Sakura Wars was a little bit of a risk to even bring over here to the West, because they really didn't know how the game would sell. Sakura Wars, I believe it was So Long My Love. That one did not sell very well over here in the West, so Sega even bringing this one out was a little bit of a risk, but it looks like that risk paid off. Critical reception of the game was pretty solid, and overall I thought the game was very good. So different kind of JRPG, might not be one that's for everyone. However, if you're one that is a big fan of character development, relationship building, and things of that nature, I do think Sakura Wars is going to be something right up your alley. Next up, we have Trials of Mana. Boy, oh boy, did Square Enix over-deliver, in my opinion, with this one. I was looking forward to Trials of Mana, but I wasn't as sold on the game as a lot of other people. The Mana franchise as a whole was not one of those JRPGs that I held a lot of nostalgic appeal towards, so maybe that was part of the reason why I wasn't really looking forward to it. However, then I played the demo, and I was like, man, this is going to be something special. And then the game came out, and the game was something of high quality. It was a great JRPG with an incredible amount of replayability. I think if one thing that stands out with Trials of Mana is that the game is incredibly replayable, and you'll want to play through it a couple times so you get the overall context of the story. Gameplay is good, story is incredibly engaging, and yes, the visuals might not be incredible in any sense of the imagination. However, I think the presentation elements worked really well with the game, and this was another one, was not priced at a full $60, and I can always appreciate that, even though in the case of Trials of Mana, given how much content the game has, given the quality of the game, I think they could have easily gotten away with a $60 price tag, but whatever the case may be, they decided to price it a little bit less, and I think that worked out in their favor as well, and it ultimately turned out to be an awesome JRPG, and one that may have slipped through the cracks a little bit if you find it for a good deal, or you just want a new JRPG to play, Trials of Mana is definitely one that is worthwhile. Next up, this list would not be complete if I did not mention Persona 5 Royal, and it definitely gets the number 2 spot. Persona 5 was a tremendous JRPG, and many people consider it to be the greatest JRPG of all time. Well, that was before the release of Persona 5 Royal, because if you somehow think Persona 5 is still the greatest JRPG of all time, well, you are just objectively incorrect. I mean, we're all entitled to our own opinions, but you are literally just incorrect because Persona 5 Royal exists. Royal is taking Persona 5 and making it a much, much better game if that was even possible. Not necessarily fundamentally and mechanically. Mechanically, Persona 5 worked real well, and from a fundamental standpoint, the game just fired on all cylinders. However, Persona 5 adds, Persona 5 Royal adds a sizable amount of new content and makes the already lengthy experience in Persona 5 even more content-packed. I guess that's the only way you could say Persona 5 is a better game. Like, Persona 5 took up too much of your time. Well, Persona 5 Royal is going to take up even more of your time, but it's absolutely a thrill to play and an enjoyable game. New characters are incredibly engaging, and you know what Persona 5 is all about. It's a fantastic game, and Royal just makes it even better. If you want to consider this a 10 out of 10 JRPG, I honestly wouldn't hold it against you, but for me, it was a fantastic game and one of the best JRPGs of all time. I don't think it's any stretch of the imagination to at least consider it that. And lastly, considering the fact Persona 5 Royal, while amazing, was an extension of an already released game, my number 1 has to be Final Fantasy VII Remake. And yes, I am a Final Fantasy nut hugger. I always have been, I always will be. Final Fantasy is probably my favorite franchise in all of gaming, and I was super stoked for the Final Fantasy VII Remake for a lot of different reasons. And man, I thought Square Enix absolutely delivered with the FF7 Remake. And Square Enix sometimes, man, they're a little bit iffy. I wasn't a big fan of FF15, but FF7 Remake, from a visual standpoint, the voice acting, the gameplay, all of it was incredibly well done. Yes, it's not this grandiose open world, but I don't think it needed to be. Final Fantasy VII, if you go back and play the original, at least the early portion, the Midgar section, it was a fairly linear experience, and you don't want to overwhelm the early portion of the game by adding a lot of content that doesn't make sense. And overall, I thought all of the content was fairly good. Even some of the side quests that did, you know, kind of feel like fetch quests, I still felt they were enjoyable to do. And then, of course, say what you want about the story, I am incredibly excited for where it goes. If you don't know, the story is changing quite a bit from the original Final Fantasy. Look, the game has been out for a while. At this point, I feel like you should know, and I feel like it's general knowledge out there. I won't go into the exact changes, but for the most part, the early portion of the game and the majority of the game sticks true to Final Fantasy VII. However, you see inclinations here and there about, okay, where is this going? And man, by the end, let's just say I am really excited where Final Fantasy VII Remake takes this story. Either it's going to be absolutely awesome, or it's going to be a complete train wreck, and I'm all in either way. Final Fantasy VII Remake has my attention for the foreseeable future, and every subsequent part, as long as they're entertaining, they're going to get my $60 or $70 for it. Yeah, probably $70, given the trajectory of game prices, but as an isolated experience, I thought Final Fantasy VII Remake was absolutely awesome, and a game that I would give a strong, strong recommendation to. I thought it was one of the best games of the year, and definitely, for my money, the best JRPG of the year. But that's going to conclude this video. Definitely interested to hear what you guys think. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.